Immortal John Hancock here, and today I'd like to talk about retro collecting. Where does it go from here? This is not a doom and gloom speech. No, I don't think there's a crash coming. I think that there are several things to think about looking at retro collecting and moving forward. What does that look like? And so first thing is that it's important to know that there's more than ever many ways to play video games, and that playing video games is separate from collecting video games. But I do believe that the availability of playing video games anywhere does affect the collecting market. And so let's look at that. And original hardware and software is getting really expensive. Now, not for everything. You know, you can look at some video game consoles, especially the older ones, the early generation machines that are getting so old that people didn't grow up with them, and that is affecting the market. And so you can still get an original Atari pretty inexpensively. It was mass produced, and you know, more and more people didn't grow up with Atari. A lot of people started playing video games even after Nintendo. And so as time moves on, so does what people want to collect. And so that's really important to look at. That, you know, I don't think there's this big crash coming. Some people talk about it. I don't see that happening. I think that pop culture and video games is huge, and it just looks different. And so I don't ever kind of look at kind of the financial aspect of games, but that there is a financial aspect of games, and that, you know, there's people that sell them as their livelihood. And you know, I've talked to people, and I think that video games in general are taking a huge evolution from going physical to digital, and it's not there yet. There's still physical games being made: Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch. And so moving forward, that is going to change. And so it's not there yet, but you know, again, as long as there's physical media and things to sell, that will continue on as a market, a secondary market. You know, I could see kids growing up with Nintendo Switch and wanting to experience it that again when they have disposable income. Hopefully they have disposable income when they get older. And I could see that being retro gaming, you know, in you know, probably 20 years, that the Switch will be sought after as a secondary market. And yeah, so weird stuff like that, you know, I see that happening. And it's important to know, and that brings up that retro collecting is always changing. And so kind of what I said before, that people that grew up with something, as time moves on, that's collected less. And so a good example is Nintendo Entertainment System. And so Nintendo Entertainment System was the bee's knees back in the day. But as time moves on, more and more people grew up with PlayStation. And so how that shift is making people remember things differently than, you know, than what was popular when I grew up is not popular now. And so it's just really interesting as time moves forward how that changes and what that looks like. You know, some people get weirded out to think that, you know, the original Xbox is retro gaming, but the truth of the matter, it is. You know, a lot of people are excited about the backwards compatibility with playing original Xbox games because they grew up with them, and so it's causing some games to be sought after now that were, you know, $10 for years. Now people are older and going back and revisiting original Xbox games, which for many people doesn't seem like it's retro collecting, but it is. And so that's that ever-changing evolution of retro gaming and collecting. And so it's just fascinating to me. Availability matters. And so if people do not have a viable option to play games, to find games, then I think it does affect the market. And so these clone consoles that are out, and there's many of them, there's There's high-ends like the analog company. They make some great retro consoles and FPGA based, and that offers a quality product for people to play and experience Super Nintendo, Famicom, play those on modern television sets. Now, a lot of these original consoles came out, they were made for CRTs, and a lot of them, when you hook them up to an HD TV, they don't look great. And so having viable options to play a collection, I think, is important. That's one of the strengths of video games. You know, there are a lot of collectors out there that don't play their games, but there's a lot of collectors that do. I'm a collector. I like to play my video games. Not everything, but a lot of my games aren't sealed, and I like to, especially, you know, if I can, I'll take an original game and showcase it on my channel, which I've done before, and it's great. It's great to show that you know, that's the strength of video games, is being able to play and collect, and so I love that about it. Hardware failure is continuing to be an issue, and especially with disc-based consoles, it's going to be on the rise. And so replacement consoles and parts is important, and it'll be a continued secondary market, and we're getting away from cartridge-based consoles to more disc-based consoles with a lot more moving parts. Pop culture influences change all the time. You know, this is a year that, you know, Ready Player One, the movie, came out, and, you know, you could get an adventure cart, you know, a couple bucks. And, you know, it came out, and adventure became, you know, overnight, you know, quadrupled in value. And now it's you know, I don't know what the price is, but it's way more than it was. And, you know, as the movie dies down a little bit, I'm sure that the Atari cart will go back to hopefully close to what it originally was. We'll see. But those type of references happen all the time. Someone will make a game popular. Someone will do a shout out about a game. You know, we live in a day and age in which one person can talk about a game and it can affect, at least temporarily, the value of something. But the truth of the matter is that there's entire generations of people that remember things, and those experiences, those nostalgic memories, collectively really affect the market more than anything. And so, you know, when a whole entire generation remembers growing up with a Nintendo 64, and then they want to revisit that, you know, that can really affect the market. And so that's constantly changing, though, because there'll be a time in which people will be growing up and remembering the Xbox more than anything else, or PlayStation. Let's say PlayStation is probably a better example because it sold more. PlayStation 2 is huge, you know, and that market will eventually continue to develop, and you'll have more people that grew up with a PlayStation over an Xbox or Nintendo. It's not all bad news. So I think it's important to know that there's more and more conventions that are appearing around the United States, and that will get people excited. You're seeing more cons, comic cons, you're seeing more pop culture references to video games. It's just becoming something more mainstream. And, you know, back in the day, being a nerd and playing video games, that was, you know, kind of, you were a nerd if you played games. Now it's like everybody plays video games, and so it's more accepted and mainstream. And so I think that does impact the collecting aspect of it, because it becomes more normal, you know. And so I think that the more availability and the more references to video games just makes it more accepted, and more people choose it as a hobby, because it still is a relatively inexpensive hobby. How you look at it, it's one way or another. But again, that's my thoughts on it. I know it's kind of a ramble, but I just want to say I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to continue to tune into my channel, to continue to hear me chat about video games or showcase something in my collection. I have some great stuff planned. I'm wrapping up a pretty busy week at school, And so I look forward to planning some future videos and showcasing some pretty cool stuff. I'm still uploading 3 videos a week, one on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Thank you so much. This is the Immortal John Hancock. You take care.